Yeah, I'll be on YouTube. In fact, oh, you see me now? You see me in there? We're recording live right now. We're streaming live right now on YouTube. Hello, this is Robert Phoenix, and I'm broadcasting, streaming live from Soulutions in Newtown, Pennsylvania, where I love to come a couple times a year. And you can't see most of the rest of the room, but it's packed. We've got at least 100 people here. It's so hot. I'm sweating. It's a very intimate crowd. Everybody's really eager to dive into tonight's presentation talk. And I normally do this on Sunday night, and I have a different show that I do on Friday. It's called the Friday FARcast, and it's kind of a far-out show. I do a lot of interviews with people. And on Sunday night, I do an astrology live stream. So I'm kind of combining the two of them tonight. And what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about the upcoming eclipses. And we're going to look at those. We're looking at timing. We're trying to understand sort of what they mean, where they are in terms of our own current situation, where they were last year, some of the things that went down last year that are very indicative and very clear with the eclipse energy and the nodal energy, which is really the important kind of theme, because the nodal energy will be with us for the entire year. The eclipses are like bursts. And the interesting thing about eclipses is that they may not happen immediately. A lot of times people will think that an eclipse will be an instantaneous event. And sometimes it can. I think it was back in from 1994, 95, I believe there was a big full solar eclipse over Iran. And right after that, a day after that, a massive earthquake. So by and large, this tends to be a little bit rare when eclipses occur, but it does happen. Now, what was really interesting is I think the last eclipse that we had, it was, let me just see if I can wrap my head around it. Hold on, it was Nancy Pelosi. Oh, right. The last eclipse we had was at 28 Leo. Yeah, it was 28 Leo. And that's where Nancy Pelosi has her Pluto, 28 degrees Leo. So what's also interesting is that that's Donald Trump's rising sign. So what did we see during that time? We saw kind of this embattled, confrontational sort of dance between Pelosi and Trump. And the eclipse energy can take place about a week and a half before and about a week and a half after. So it's about a 3-week window with eclipse energies. And it was almost as if Pelosi at that point, this is just my interpretation, at that point, she had reached this kind of zenith or apotheosis. She was very influential. The Democrats had just taken over the House. She was defiant with President Trump and the Republicans, but mostly Trump. And after that, she's been a lot less visible. She's been a lot less sort of focal, right? The focal point has shifted in a lot of ways. I mean, when we think of the Democratic Party now, we think of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's getting tons of press. And that eclipse on her Pluto, I feel like was sort of this kind of denouement in her political career, because the tide is changing. There's kind of a new energy, whether you're into that energy or not, whether you respect or not. Clearly, it's washed upon our shore, and it's very interesting to see this in light of kind of where Pelosi's been since then. In fact, the confrontational rhetoric has given way to I don't think we should impeach him, right? So this is the eclipse on Pluto represents in a lot of ways our life force. Now the sun represents our life force in terms of who we are with our character and our personal story in this lifetime. But Pluto really connects us. It's like the silver cord to our earthly existence. Because when we leave, we're generally traveling through Pluto, which is the underworld, right? So when she had an eclipse right on her Pluto, that was, I think, fairly significant for her. But it wasn't immediate. In the aftermath, you can see that it certainly feels like her power is beginning to wane, especially in light of the Mueller report and what's happened since then. brought up a whole different set of issues, but it's not that confrontational kind of leverage that was there before. If you go back to 2017, which was the what we call the Great American Eclipse, you guys remember that one?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to have another one in, what is it?
2024.
2024, big time.
It's going down.
And it's going to come. It's going to cross right through the center of the country.
Right.
It's going to go right through where I live, which is Texas.
It's going to cross right at the New
Madrid fault line. Yes, that's a big eclipse, and it completes this pretty significant eclipse cycle. But if we look back in that time, it's a really interesting time because that eclipse occurred at 28 degrees Leo. Okay, and
the 2017.
That's right, and that eclipse was, that sun was right on Donald Trump's ascendant. Okay, so what did we have there? And by the way, the last eclipse I was referring to closely, that was the moon. That was the moon on Pluto. Just to clear that up. Okay? Very clear about that. So what happened from that point in time it was August 21st, 2017 to just last week. What's happened, whether again you are pro-Trump or anti-Trump, however you want to slice or dice that, what we saw this energy that was obstructing his ability to either lead or grow or blow the country up or whatever, however you want to translate that. There was obstruction, there was interference, and we can see this with the dark sun eclipsing his ascendant. Now, the cycle of that eclipse, I believe, ended when we had the lunar eclipse at 28 degrees, which was our last eclipse. That's the one that was on Nancy Pelosi's Pluto. So not long after that, what are we having now? We're having the obstruction method. Okay? So we have a complete eclipse cycle from sun to moon. Okay? So that gives you some understanding about to some extent how eclipses will work and can work. This is the chart of the moment, or this is for tonight. Here we are, and we have a nice Libra ascendant over here. So we're all diplomatic and friendly and cordial with one another, right? There's a lot of grace, and there's a lot of, hey, it's ruled by Venus. There's a lot of Venus in there tonight, okay? And down here, we have Jupiter in the third house, and the third house represents communication in your local area. Right? So I'm assuming everybody here is local, right? So Jupiter has opportunity and the ability to expand our communication. So hopefully tonight, what we'll be doing is we'll have expansive conversation, expansive thoughts. Now this is not, this is Gemini's house. So Sagittarius and Jupiter are hanging out here. So we're stretching the bounds of that house. You know, Gemini tends to be about bits and pieces of data and information. It has to, Gemini can be it's very local. You know, sometimes it relates to things like gossip. You know, it's the talk of the town. That's Gemini. And it plays a role. You know, it's sort of the local language that everybody shares, and it's the news of the day, right? Sagittarius is very different. Sagittarius is the big picture. It's the world at large, right? It's based on wisdom and sort of the big idea. So what we're trying to do tonight is we're trying to open up this area, local language, and bring some big ideas into our experience right here. We've got a number of planets in the fourth house: Saturn, Pluto, and the moon. So the fourth house is the home, represents femininity, right? So one can make a case that based on the demographics of our audience tonight, that this is you. And it's very powerful. We have Saturn, we have Pluto, and we have the moon just getting ready to ingressing into the sign of Aquarius. So tomorrow morning when you wake up, you'll be waking up to Aquarian moon. Let me see. So tomorrow you'll be waking up to an Aquarian moon. I think it's a good Saturday moon, right? You get up, you know, it's good feeling, good vibe in the air. that people like each other. Generally speaking, maybe have a little more patience and understanding. But tonight, we're going to talk about maybe some very intense aspects. Saturn, Pluto conjunction, it's going to get very close. And I think it gets up to 20 degrees and goes retrograde. And next year, in January, both Saturn and Pluto will be conjunct. And it's a pretty significant aspect. So right now, they're very, very close. And the moon is in a very cool and slightly detached Capricorn. And it's ahead of Pluto. So theoretically, this is how this would work. Since the moon is ahead of Pluto, we'd be taking things in emotionally, because that's what the moon represents, emotionality, right? And then there could be some very intense kind of cognition with Pluto, like the information or what we're sharing. And it could be even outside of this room, right? But this is where it's at right now in this neighborhood and for this area. And then Saturn represents some kind of formulation, some kind of opinion, some kind of judgment. So what starts off as kind of reasoned emotion goes through transformation. And here there's logic, cognition, and kind of a formulated plan. Saturn and the moon also represent the father and the mother in the chart. So they're very close together with Pluto sitting right in between them. So this is a very interesting kind of time in and of itself where it'd be interesting to be in other people's homes. Like we get a bunch of like webcams in other people's homes right now just to see what was going on, although I'm sure somebody does. But it would be really interesting to see because I would imagine that what would be going on in other people's homes in this area could be like, fairly intense conversations or sitting around a dinner table and wondering where the world is going. What's happening politically. And I know that this area tends to be a little bit more on the blue left side. So you could have some very intense discussions tonight, right? So this is all in the fourth house, and this is representing the home and the hearth and the womb, and there's some very serious energy. And so some of the things we'll talk about tonight might actually, be in this space, and we'll spend a lot of time here because what we're talking about is where we live, this country, this world, and what's going on between the nodes, the lunar nodes, correct? Right? Cancer, the moon represents the sign of Cancer, and then Saturn, which represents Capricorn, and that's where the nodes are. Okay? Over here in the fifth house, which is the house of pleasure and play and fun, but we have Venus. It's just gone into Pisces. It's a really nice position for Venus. It's loving, it's kind, it's creative, it's forgiving. And in the fifth house, it could have some kind of romantic sorts of energies. There's generally just a very positive, good feeling, spiritual feeling with Venus and Pisces in the fifth house. It was really funny today. We were walking down the street. We saw a couple of kids, two groups of kids, walking down the street. And in the first group, there was a guy with a girl, and you could tell that there was something going on there. That there was kind of a high level chat happening, taking place. And then behind them, there were their mates. And it just reminded me, that little sort of vignette reminded me of Venus in the fifth house. It's like young love. Spring is in the air. That's a very Venus kind of fifth house experience. Over here, we have Mercury, Neptune conjunction. So we might be able to get into a mind meld tonight. So has everybody had a really good time in Mercury retrograde?
Mm-hmm. My bridge fell down.
Your bridge fell down.
Fell down. The bridge.
That is Mercury retrograde as it gets.
Yeah.
Right?
If I was at McDonald's having a hamburger with Lincoln.
Really?
Yeah, you don't bite into a hamburger. So
maybe that's a sign from God. Get out of McDonald's, guys.
Yeah, but that's only there for him.
Right. Yeah. Anybody else have any Mercury retrograde horror stories?
Not horror, but the technology, the phone and the computers were just
crazy.
You're not the only one.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been talking. I do this every day. This is the worst week I've had in terms of my broadcasting. For a number of different, every day was a different issue.
Yeah, well, it's making station direct now, so it gets powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Mercury station moving direct. We're getting out of the woods of Mercury retrograde, and hopefully I'm streaming live right there. Everything's Okay, good.
And you had some problems getting here.
Me? I did have problems. Well,
Everybody's coming on Thursday.
Pat knows everything about me. I think Pat works for the NSA. She's a spook.
I don't like, you know, I don't like technology. I couldn't get on Zoom.
Well, anyway, I did have a hard time getting here. My flights were canceled. Yeah, my flights were canceled. I had a.
And I wouldn't want to rob a bank with you.
I'm a squealer.
You just threw me under the bus.
Well, he thinks I'm psychic or something. Or spying on him.
Well, I'm just messing
I know you are. Believe it or not, kid. You so is she.
Yeah.
But I really threw you.
So anyway, we're getting ready to move out of this Mercury retrograde phase. Now, the conjunction with Neptune, it's really interesting. We've had a ton of water, right? We've had the Sun in Neptune. I'm sorry, Sun in Pisces went into Aries. What about 7 days ago, 8 days ago? Right when we had the big, fat, beautiful Libra moon. Was that a great moon?
Yeah.
Love that moon. Felt so good. So what do we have? I mean, we've got Mercury in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces. We had the Sun just moving. We've had a ton of water, haven't we?
Right.
Like the middle of the country. Yeah. Getting just completely flooded out. You know, close to 1 million calves. I mean, terrible. Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas. There's your Pisces. There's your effluvia. Also, Pisces rules gas and oil before it's refined. And where I live in Texas, we had a major refinery explosion in Houston, burned for 3 days. And then in Georgetown, north of Austin, they had a gas leak, natural gas leak, and they basically told people to abandon the area, and they have not been let back into their homes. So that's more Pisces, natural gas kinds of stuff, right? And by the way, gas prices have gone up too. So we're having even more of that on some level. Chiron, has just moved into Aries. I'm a big proponent of Chiron. Chiron, for you folks who aren't aware of it, was discovered in 1977. 1977. And it is an asteroid that sits.
4 Taurus.
What's that?
At 4
Taurus, that's right. Were you on my webinar?
Look, something happened to me at 4 Taurus, and it came to fruition in 1993.
Okay, Pat's like my Ed McMahon, if you haven't figured that out yet.
Now I'm waiting for Uranus to get here to see what happens, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Chiron's a bridge between Saturn.
That's right, and Uranus.
Oh, Chiron, yeah, Saturn and the 98.
So what Pat's referring to is that Chiron is in this asteroid belt between Saturn and Uranus. It's a bridge.
Right.
It's a bridge between the two. And Chiron as a mythological character is quite interesting. He's the most evolved of all the centaurs. He was instructed in the arts by Apollo and Athena, and interesting character. Well, it's in Aries now, and the last time it was in Aries was 1968, 1969. Has a 50-year cycle, and it's back again.
Right.
So one of the things that we were going through in 1968, 1969 was the Vietnam War, right? We're dealing with Aries, which is about war. Yeah, right. So are we going to, experience that kind of thing again? Probably not. We'll experience our own version, right? So what happened just shortly after Chiron went into Aries with this event in New Zealand, right, in Christchurch?
Right.
Chiron and Aries moments.
What's going on here?
Yeah, that's a major.
Oh, I have Dickens friends there.
Yeah. So that's one aspect. Right? And we've got this ongoing debate and dialogue about guns. Are they safe? Are they not? Can we have them? Chiron and Aries. The other thing that took place during that time was the women's liberation. So we had women who said, hey, look, we want to be empowered. We want equal rights, equal pay. And 50 years later, we're getting very close to, maybe the realization of that, but also a shift taking place for women and men.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is going to be a very interesting time because, I was looking at the United States chart for the country and the progressed version. And the progressed chart of the United States, Venus is at the final degrees of Aries. So it's going to progress into Taurus. When I saw that, I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be very interesting, because the sort of the locus of the soul of women I think are going to change along with that, and what we're going to see is a return to kind of an enlightened femininity. Yeah, and this is going to be within the next year when Venus transits into Taurus. I would say it would be almost like a return also to things like arts and crafts, making and building, and that track has already been laid. I think we're going to see more of that. Men, on the other hand, have this new responsibility with Chiron and Aries. And I just had a really great guest on my show 2 weeks ago, Zeus Yomanis, goes by the name of Dr. Zeus, who wrote a book called The Spiritually Confident Man. He's a PhD, a counselor. And we got together and we had a great conversation about these new models for masculinity. And it really feels like, you know, the dark side of that is this kind of idea that men are toxic, right? That is sort of the dark kind of version of this. The new or the transformed version is that, well, maybe men aren't that toxic. Maybe what men need is some support in being able to anchor a new role, right? So it's, I think it's a really fine line between labeling a group and say, well, this is how this group is, because there can't be some truth in that, right? But at the same time, you don't want to hermetically seal that group, because when you do, then you cut off the ability to grow, right? So this is going to be a very interesting time with men with Chiron and Aries. And look at that, the sun is right there in Aries, and when I cast the chart, it was right on the descendant. So this is, in terms of interactivity and one-on-one, it's actually a really, really good time. We're exchanging ideas, we're connecting with the mind that represents Aries. What's interesting about the sun is that it is what's called the singleton. It is not aspected at all. You see that? Yeah. Right over there? You go down, we've got a quintile with the moon, right? Isn't that what that is? My glasses on. Yeah, it's a quintile. But other than that, there's nothing else going on with the sun. So in an individual chart, if somebody has a planet like the sun that's not aspected, that individual stands out, right? It's like, and they can often feel quite naked and vulnerable. So they may want to be incredibly private, or they may want to be more withdrawn, because there's something about them that stands out, right? It could be anything. They could be incredibly handsome or incredibly beautiful, or they may have some deformity, but they stand out in some ways, right? And it's an interesting aspect. If it's Mercury, and Mercury is not aspected, then it's their mind that stands out. What's hard with the unaspected planet is what to do with it. Like, I know people that have unaspected Mercuries, and they're brilliant, but there's no way for them to connect their thoughts with people. Yeah. You know, just like the unaspected sun, they may have a great talent or something that stands out, but it may be very difficult for others to accept that. Or they may have a difficult time accepting themselves, so they'll keep themselves on the sidelines. It's a really interesting aspect. It's also known as the singleton. Now, there is one minor aspect, and that is the quintile here to here. That's a 72-degree relationship with the moon. So there's something called the biquintile and the quintile. The biquintile is 144 degrees. The quintile is half of that. And they're known basically as master aspects. They're like trines. You know, this blue line here is a trine. And that's like really easy energy, right? Flow. So quintile is like a trine on steroids. And even though it's a minor aspect, you come into this lifetime and you have a gift with the quintile or the biquintile. And sometimes it takes a while to understand that and to accept it. I can do this, or I'm good at this. I have a friend who has, you know, modicum of kind of interesting aspects with other planets in the chart, but she's got like 5 biquintiles and quintiles. And when you have kind of an overage of aspects like that, sometimes it's almost too much, that the person has too much beneath the surface, maybe too many gifts, and trying to fit it all into kind of one expression. And this is a person who's gone through some really intense, you know, rehab and soul searching and deep work in Christianity, and she's really finding who she is. It's taken a while because there's so much happening at a deeper level of the twin. It's like, what do I do with it? What do I do? It can be very overwhelming.
I always look for them in the chart.
Yeah, they're interesting.
Yeah, you can see the BQ, and they say they really are powerful.
Very powerful.
But
Absolutely.
you don't know, like you have to discover.
The quintile is called the master degree or the master aspect.
Right.
So tonight we've got a quintile between the sun and the moon, which is fantastic. That's the masculine and the feminine. So we have an innate ability. Who's ever experiencing this right now?
You're inspiring them.
Well,
That's true.
We have an innate ability right now to connect.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This
Right.
is the opportunity for the quintile to get in there.
Right. So there's exposition, right? The sun, right? And then there's the moon, which is reception. So it's kind of like there's no lag time or loss between exposition and reception. So it's cool, right? Okay, we got Uranus over here. It just moved into the sign of Taurus. It's going to be there for 7 years. And when Uranus first went into Taurus last year, like almost, right at the drop, major earthquakes and volcanoes in Hawaii. Huge, significant stuff. Now, I believe that Uranus and Taurus represents earth changes, period. So when we experience the flooding, the deluge, that's potentially an earth change, even though it represents water, and Taurus is an earth sign. It happens fast. Uranus and Taurus happens quickly. So over the course of the next 7 years, by the way, it's in its fall, in the course of the next 7 years, I think we're going to see more and more crisis, more and more intensity and energy and tectonic shifts in the land. I think this is going to be a very significant time for that. Are we going to revert to the Gordon-Scallion map? Well, this gets back to what Pat was saying about the eclipse, which meets at the New Madrid fault line. And there have been people, many, many years, have been speculating that at some point that New Madrid fault line is going to rip right open.
Split the country right in half.
Right.
It goes, it's where the Mississippi and the Ohio River, it's Missouri, where the Mississippi and the Ohio River, it was Cairo. And it was supposed to be Chicago, Cairo, because the Mississippi and the Ohio River met for trade.
It was like the Tigris and the Euphrates.
But because it was the most devastating earthquake. It was unbelievable. It's scary as hell. They always talk about the San Andreas, but that's the one.
No, the New Madrid.
We'll have a highway right through the middle.
The New Madrid is.
It happened the day Dickens was born. Public Dickens expert. It happened. Well, it was November of 1811. It started. There were 4 hits. The last hit was on the day Charles Dickens was born, and I say that put all that energy into him, and what he did, he just changed the world. Social, again. And then he came to America and he followed the trail that he could. Every place when that eclipse hit, you could hear the church bells in Boston. This was Missouri. Toronto, Canada. I mean, look it up on Wikipedia. And you should hear the stories about the animals, how they wailed. It just made the eclipse of 1811. It was 1811, 1812. The last hit was the day Charles Dickens was born. February 7th, 1812. But it was 4 shocks. But the big one was the last one, February 7th. But I get so scared about that.
So this is that's
But look at it. Try Wikipedia. It's amazing. I just found it because I was looking what events happened on the day Charles Dickens was born, and I start researching that.
So this Uranus will be in Taurus for the next 7 years. And we're also going to be dealing not just with potential earth changes, seismic activity, money. Guarantee you money's going to change over the next 7 years.
About that. My Merrill Lynch came out.
Yeah.
She said, oh, look at how this went up in October. Because Uranus went into Taurus, it got better.
Right. There's even what's interesting about that.
Because I said, right, let me check.
There's even been a spike in the cryptos.
Right.
Since Uranus went into Taurus, which actually makes sense in a lot of ways.
And now retrograde, but it's going to But here's something for you to think about. What's going to happen when Uranus goes to 4 degrees of Taurus, where Chiron had its discovery degree?
Well, I think
I'll let you know in my life, because
Yeah.
something happened to me.
well,
And I wasn't into astrology in 1977.
yeah. Well, the other thing too with Uranus and Taurus, I think we're going to be dealing with like production cycles and manufacturing and a radical break, right? If you look at, we're at the kind of the last dying gasps of the 20th century, right? I mean, it's the 20th. I mean, theoretically, it's over, but this 21st century, the brave new world,
This is really
the
starting.
future shock has not kicked in yet, and it will. It will. Now, for me, when I look at Uranus here, right, it's in Taurus, early degrees, and what it's doing, it's actually squaring off right now. It's squaring off against Pluto in a very wide square, and Saturn's coming along for the ride. So one of the things that's happening is that we're seeing more and more closures of brick and mortar stores, right? And we're seeing this radical kind of shift from physical to non-physical. Taurus is physical. And Uranus represents a reorientation, a radical reorientation of that. I was talking with a woman who worked for Walmart for 30 years, and she says they're laying people off right and left. And I said, were they replacing the robots? And I said, I know they are. She said, absolutely right. So this is a really important piece to understand, because Walmart is the canary in the coal mine. Because Walmart employs so many people. If you look at a map of the major employers in states across the country, Walmart represents probably about 65 to 70% of the employers across the country. So if we have people that are losing their marginal jobs with Walmart, what's going to happen next? Okay, this is the event horizon we're moving towards, and that gets into Saturn-Pluto conjunction next year. Okay,
You can tell them the bad news. The Jupiter.
well, with Jupiter, I think there are two things.
Makes it
There
work.
are two things with Jupiter. It could expand and make it bigger, right? And it might also potentially offer a solution.
Yeah, it's a great
But you got to watch out for the solution. It may not be the one that you would want. Okay, so we've got Uranus and Taurus, and I actually want to. Where we're going to go with the nodes is very important. It's very important in terms of relating and the relationship between Uranus and Taurus and where the nodes are currently. So tonight we've got a nice sextile between Venus and Uranus. It means meeting people quickly, right? Like here we are, we're in an unusual kind of environment. We're talking astrology. It's right there. Venus Uranus sextile. So you're in the right place. Okay, we have a Jupiter Uranus trine, one of my favorite aspects in astrology. That means we can think about big ideas and be innovative, and go on a magic carpet ride, right? And Pat can chime in with wild tales about Dickens. And now we have Mars, which is right here at the edge of Taurus, getting ready to go into Gemini. It goes into Gemini on April Fool's Day. And Gemini, of course, is the trickster of the zodiac, right? Hermes. Hermes plays tricks on the gods. And there are a number of different traditions of Hermes through all these different mythologies and cultures. And here in this country, we have the Heokaya, the coyote trickster. And there's a number of different versions of Gemini. In Egyptian mythology, it's Set, who was the bringer of chaos. So we're going to have Mars on April Fool's Day, which is the bringer of chaos. Right? That should be very interesting. Mars in Gemini is restless. It's restless energy. It could be both positive, if you want to get a lot of stuff done, multitask. But if you feel like you're frustrated or there's a backlog or you're blocked, Mars in Gemini can be at times hyperkinetic. And you may run around chasing your tail without getting a lot done. It could also be very confrontational, Mars and Gemini, in terms of chat, right? And what's happening now in this country, we've been split apart. It's very Gemini, isn't it? Right? Left, right, black, white, straight, trans, man, woman. Mars and Gemini could be pretty volatile to some extent, right? Now, what's going to happen with Mars through the cycle is it's going to wind up opposing Jupiter. Well, that should be really fun. to me, it's not quite lawlessness or anarchy, but it's very close. It's very close. Because Jupiter Sagittarius represents law.
When's Mars going to be?
I think it's, what, 20 days from now?
Yeah, 20.
20 days from now. But right now, Mars is our friend. It's trining Saturn, trining Pluto, trining the moon. So theoretically, if we sat down and said, well, what can we do about things? We might actually be able to come up with a few ideas and put them into practice. And then tonight we have Cancer on the midheaven. The midheaven being this point of contact with the world at large. There's our true node. The south node would be right down here. It would be in conjunction with Pluto and the moon. And we're going to jump into the node quickly here. Cover some eclipses. Go from there. Okay, so that's our chart. I do this on Sunday nights on the live stream, and we get into it. It's fun. All right, so let's get into these eclipses. Okay. So these are the dates. So we've already gone through these two. This was the eclipse that was at what was it, 29. It was a 29 Cancer, 0 Leo, right around there. Anyway, all right, so now we have the July 2nd solar eclipse. It's going to be down here. This is a total solar eclipse.
Yeah, 10 Cancer.
Which one? This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a total solar eclipse, and it's going to be crossing south in North America, so just kind of the bottom part. And then much of South America. This is interesting because what's going on in Venezuela? We're having a lot of conflict in Venezuela, aren't we? And Maduro is a Sagittarius. So I'm not sure that this will impact him directly with his sun sign, but I would assume that we'll see some intensity and some heat around Venezuela. And what happens sometimes with an eclipse is that because the light is blocked or occluded, we can see things quite differently. Other details begin to emerge. Right? If you're looking out into the sun and the sun is really, really bright, right, what's going to happen? You're going to squint. You may miss a few details. When it's eclipsed, you don't want to look at the sun, but the area itself is much darker and cooler. So you can kind of look around and become much more conscious of the details. Now, what's also interesting is the role that eclipses play in Mesoamerica. You know, they play a huge role in the cultures of the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Olmecs. And when an eclipse happens, and they were doing their thing, it was a very big deal. It was thought to be an absolutely terrible omen. So you're dealing not only with just the eclipse itself, but you're dealing with the mythology of the place. Right? It's going to be happening in Central America and in South America. So, you know, when we get into mythologies, we get into like the collective unconscious of a group of people, and they're responding to these archetypes that are being launched into their consciousness. And very interesting to see how people react when events like this take place in cultures that place a huge amount of either importance or kind of fatalistic outcome. So it'll be certainly interesting to watch. Now, this is happening very close to the United States' birthday, right, July 4th. So this eclipse will be right on your sun. It'll be 2 degrees off of your sun. So this would be a very interesting time for you as it relates to your own identity. You know, where are you? Where are you going? You know, where is the country going? Where's the world going? Trying to find your place in the midst of those kinds of questions. You might also have to deal with family issues during that time. People that, you know, I do a lot of readings, and I was surprised at how many people I read for that are born on or near an eclipse. It's more than you think. It's not really some highly specialized event. I'd say out of every 10 people I do reading for, 4 to 5 are either on an eclipse or near it. It's almost 50%. But if you think about it, especially if the moon is involved, I mean, that makes sense, right?
Right.
With birth.
You didn't talk about the people that leave.
Or the people leave on an eclipse?
I have some experience at the nursing home, let me tell you.
Yeah. Do they punch their tickets on the eclipse?
Well, if you're born around then, you know, like I noticed a lot of people that had March and when Uranus was in Pisces,
Yeah.
they checked out. A friend of mine, you know, my mother, what do you think? I said, and I think there was an eclipse around her birthday. Mm-hmm. But she died a few weeks earlier. But
well,
it's either October or February or March.
Well, you bring up an interesting point because this is the birth of the country.
Yeah.
Right. My opinion, and we'll get into more of this as we go through some of these charts. My opinion is we are in a major change. We are in a major state change. And whether Trump was elected or Hillary was elected, we were going to go through it.
Yeah, we have to.
Either way. And there's a book called The Fourth Turning, which I talk about fairly frequently. Fourth Turning. And the authors are Strauss and Howe. And in The Fourth Turning, so the most recent turnings took place in the 1950s, the early 1950s, which was the time of the hero. And that's when the American men came home from Europe and from the Far East, and they came home as heroes. You know, we welcomed them, we loved them, and that's like when, you know, the Westerns were really big, and Audie Murphy was really big. It was a time when the mythic hero really was front and center in the American consciousness. That was the first turning in this latest cycle. The second turning after that took place in the 1960s, and that gave birth to the artist. So we go from the hero, the arrival of the hero, to the artist. And what do we see in the 60s? Proliferation of arts, painting, film, cinema, music, you name it, right? Explosive. And they are not as enamored with the idea of the hero. They're more interested in the anti-hero versus the hero. And so we have Steve McQueen and Clint Eastwood and, you know, those characters that were kind of good, kind of bad, right? So then after that, we have a period which is really culminates in the Reagan era. And that turning is the stage or the phase of the wanderer. And this is when America begins to kind of experience its rootlessness in some ways. There's this kind of peak with kind of financial consumption, but there's this gnawing sense of, well, what's next? Where do we go from here? So people are wandering, they're looking for answers. It also coincides with the rise and the explosion of the New Age. And there's really big channeling and all that.
Right.
You know, so not only were people moving around the country, but they were also wandering in search of answers. And this leads us to the phase that we're at, which is that and these are actually related to seasonal occurrences. The hero represents Aries and springtime. The artist represents summer and Leo. Okay, and then we get to the wanderer phase, and we're really kind of in that spot between, like, you know, maybe Libra and Scorpio in the fall. If we want to extend it out a bit, maybe Sagittarius. The Sagittarius is expansive and looking for answers. Now we're in this phase where, you know, this unipolar world that America has led, that's over. That game is over. You know, other countries, China, Russia's not so much an economic power as it is more of a very sly negotiating power. So we're looking at a point now where most of the resources have been gobbled up. And, you know, what happened during the last Saturn transit of Capricorn, the planets, the countries got basically divided and reallocated. It was huge. That's when the Soviet Union fell. We had the reintegration of the Balkan states. So this phase we're in now is an involutionary cycle. Things are beginning to fall. Things are beginning to fail. Right? Things are beginning to, on some level, implode. And this is the phase of the sage. The sage. So this is winter. This is deep winter. So theoretically, we are now living in winter in America.
This is like a Pluto. We're going down.
We're
And then
going
we're going to rise
yes.
up again, transform.
So Pat brings up an interesting point because, you know, this is the beginning of a seed time, but we can't see it. We don't understand it. And something will emerge. And out of that emergence will come a new age of the hero. There will be a new spring. And it'll be a very interesting kind of version of what that hero looks like. But so we're in the last we're just in the beginning of the fourth turning. And it really coincides in a lot of ways with Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn.
Sure. And also, Robert, we're like this pattern is repeating itself from 1914, 1917, exactly
right.
100 years
The
ago.
turnings can go back further.
And
Yes.
people, after the First World War, people were into spirituality, like the New Age. That's where astrology, you know. And so it just, and then the whole world changed after that. The skirts went up, you know, we had focus went up, and everything changed.
That's
And
right.
I had a friend. He was editor of national news for the New York Times, and he was there forever. He died at 95. And he said, and I said to him, "What was your favorite decade?" Guess what he said?
The 20s,
The 30s.
the 30s.
We're in the midst of the Depression. And now I look back, I say the 60s. The 70s weren't bad either. So, I mean, it's funny, but he just shocked me when he said the 30s. Because of the music, I don't know. The films, they loved it. He just said the 30s were the best. And yet we were in the midst of the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, so this is our next eclipse, and then the one after that is going to be a lunar eclipse, just a short period of time. We're talking 2 weeks. This is partial. And I'll scroll up here a little bit. And then we have a transit of Mercury on the 11th, and then the last eclipse. That's an annular. It's on December 22nd. And that's a solar annular, so it's not a total. And it's going to sweep through East Europe, Asia, Northwest Australia, East Africa. So one of the things that the eclipses are going to be engaged in is this relationship with the nodes. Okay, so this was new moon eclipse on July. This is what we're looking at. This is the next eclipse, and you can see here. Here's the north node in Cancer, right? So it's eclipsing the moon is eclipsing the sun, right here, 10 degrees. And on the other side, we have Saturn and Pluto, and if the south node was there, you can see the south node. And then during this phase, we have a very interesting trine going on. It's an unusual trine right here, the sun in Jupiter, right? So I thought a trine, it's an inconjunct. This is 16, 17. It's going to be an inconjunct with the true node, okay? This is July 2nd. No. Yeah, the new moon eclipse. Yeah. So, okay, now let's see what we have here. Neptune. Okay, so we have Neptune square Jupiter, Neptune square Uranus, and then we have another, looks like an inconjunct here. And then we have, let's see, sextile here and semi-sextile there. So one of the things that, okay, so I want to talk about the nodes at this point, because this is, I think, a very important time to kind of bring them into the discussion. So in your natal chart, you have your true node, which is the ascending plane of the moon. And this is what Nostradamus called the dragon's head. The dragon's tail would be completely opposite on the other side. And the true node is where you want to put your energy, your direction, and intention in this lifetime. That is where you want to go. If you want to have less drag on your system, that's where you want to go.
That leads the way.
Right, exactly. You want to go with the true node. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. Just my own life. I have my true node in Virgo, and it's on the midheaven, and I have my south node in my 4th house in the sign of Pisces. And let's just my family life has been interesting. Okay, it is not the strength of my chart The strength of my chart is the true node on the midheaven, where I can sit down, talk with people, discuss things, maybe do some healing, whatever, right? Not the south node. So this lifetime, it's more important for me to be out here than it is in some ways to be kind of at home. It's just the way it is. It just happened that way. And the more that I understood this, the easier it's become to accept certain conditions in my life and not fight against them. If you try to live from the south node, your efforts will be thwarted consistently. That's like putting the cart before the horse.
And you should emphasize what house it's in. Really important.
The house is very
more than the sign.
Yeah, because the house is very. The sign is important too. Like, I've got my true node in Virgo. Right? Yeah. If I tried to do, I don't know, Aries up there.
Well, the thing is, the house tells you, what area in your life you better get out of.
Right. So here, this eclipse is taking place in the 4th house. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dane Rudhyar, who's a great astrologer, has an analogy also about the influences that you take in around your true node. And that you have to take in the best influences, whatever they are, because they're going to come out over here.
So is your true node the same link with your sun? I mean, is it the same?
Not always, no. The only reason it is for me is because I was born 2 days after an eclipse. So, but it's vitally important. And when you understand your true node, it's going to make your life more manageable.
How do you do it?
Oh, you just pick it up. Pretty simple. Yeah.
And the thing is, the house is.
The house.
You didn't tell us what house your Virgo.
Well, I said it was on the midheaven.
It's right on the. Is that right? That's your pinnacle.
Yeah. So it's conjunct my midheaven. Yeah. So I'm supposed to be in the world.
Yeah. And that really means a lot. Because that's the area, like mine's in the 11th house.
So if you have your true node, say, if you have your, this is tricky now. If you have your true node in the 1st house and your south node is in the 7th house, your orientation is on self. Your not orientation is relationship. Now, does that preclude you from having a relationship? Not really, but I'll tell you what it means. It means that you've got to take care of yourself first. You have to make sure that your needs are met, whatever they are. You cannot sacrifice them for a relationship. That's critical. Then you can navigate into a relationship. Doesn't mean I can't have a family. No, not really. But I have to establish my worth in the world before it can, begin to sort of manage itself. Because what you want with the south node is for it to manage itself. You don't want to go in and try to take a wrench to it, right? If you have your true node, let's say in the 11th house, and your south node is in the 5th house, you're supposed to be a team player. That's Aquarius' house. Group orientation, less ego, more growth. You also might have difficulty with children, right? You might have difficulty having children in your life, either birthing them. It could be a burden, but you may actually be okay with maybe adopting a child. That would be an 11th house kind of plan.
Yeah, I have 2 adopted. I got the
in the 11th house. There you go.
And I got my south node is 5th house of children. Yeah. I couldn't have any.
Yeah, see, there you go. Living example.
Then I did get one.
She's a plant. I just bring her here just for that moment. Thanks, Pat. Totally worth it.
I swear, I said, he's streaming. I'm going to shut up. Like, he's used to me.
You're going to have to pay royalties on this stream, I think, that you said.
No. It's all for you, honey. You're the guy. Not me. I do it for fun.
So you guys get that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So another really interesting one, let's say if you have the true node in your 6th house and your south node in the 12th house, but you're not supposed to be hanging out in the airy fairyland. You need to, roll up your sleeves and get to work and figure out solutions and help people, right? And if you flip it around And I get these people from time, they love it when I tell them this. If their south node is in the 6th house, I said, you're not meant to work. Thank you. Thank you. What am I supposed to do? You're meant to be creative. Go be creative. Go be a psychic, you know? Go hang out in your 12th house. Yeah, I mean, it could be a lot of things.
Sure.
You know, it could also be, you know, kind of helping people, but not in a more helping people than, you know, making lattes at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I've seen the nodes work in my life, and I know other people have. I'll just give you one more example. I've got a bunch of planets in my 11th house, so I thought I'd be really good at helping, like my friends who are in bands and stuff like that at one point in time. And it was okay, but I realized I was doing somebody else's thing. And it was only until I got up here at my north node that my life actually began to have purpose and meaning. And that's when Saturn was transiting my midheaven. So when you have Saturn transiting your north node, you're going to get the message. When it's transiting the south node, you have to pay very, very close attention. It could be challenging when Saturn's on your south node. And you can't be very, you have to deal with responsibilities. It's like going in and fixing the plumbing. That's the one time you have to like address the south node directly.
Yeah, I got it on right now.
And there you go. You got to address that.
I don't know my teeth are going to be missing after the oral surgery.
So the energy with this eclipse is very, well, I'd be interested, okay? I've kind of broken it down a little bit, but just from an intuitive feeling. Like just look at this. What do you feel when you see this? Anybody have any hint?
Well, I mean, what do you see? You see the zodiac and you see the planet.
But sometimes people look at geometric shapes.
Yeah, well, that's it. If you know the aspects.
Yeah, just I'm just looking at the aspects. Just like
yes, pyramids. We both said.
You got a base at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a base at the bottom for sure.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the opposite of that.
You have that square.
Well, here the big aspects are this square with Jupiter to Neptune.
Yeah.
Let me just talk about that just for a second.
Yeah.
The Jupiter, this has been going on for this whole year, and pretty much this whole year. And one of the things that we have been dealing with on a collective level is news, fake news, hoaxes, what's real, who's telling the truth. Because Jupiter in Sagittarius wants to have some representation of the truth and order, the big cosmic picture, right? The big aha, right? That's Jupiter in Sagittarius. Neptune comes in and it squares it, which means it's like creating a dissonance in that experience. And it can do a lot of different things. It can blow it up. It can like prick it like a balloon.
The fact that it's confidence.
What's that?
Jupiter has all the confidence.
And Neptune will drain it. Right. And it's hard to get a handle on what. So let's use the Jussie Smollett experience, right? What happened? Well, he said that he had been accosted by two guys who were MAGA-wearing white dudes at 2 a.m. on one of the coldest nights in history in Chicago. They were just waiting for him, right? And all of a sudden now he's a cause celeb, and there's a lot of stuff going on around racism, you know, and the white nationalism, and what people are coming to his side, and it's a really dramatic event. And then what happens?
Drop it.
Well, we find out that it's not what he said it was.
Right.
He said, "This is the truth." And he was so convincing, wasn't he? Robert, he even cried. I mean, that guy should get an Oscar for that. Right?
Yeah.
So then what happens? Neptune comes in and says, guess what? That's not the truth. Right? You've got these two guys who, by the way, Jupiter and Sagittarius from another country.
Yeah.
Jupiter and Sagittarius represents foreign cultures.
Yeah.
They're from Nigeria.
Right.
And what did they do? They told the truth.
Right.
Now, Pisces, there are two signs that represent acting. Pisces and Leo. Pisces likes to put on masks. Leo likes to perform, right? So here we have Pisces, the actor, and Jupiter and Sagittarius, the truth tellers, squaring off against one another. So now we think, okay, he's done. We got him. 16 counts of felonies, right? Felonies. And guess what happens now? Gone. So we've just seen Jupiter square Neptune 3 times.
Right.
3 times. And a Mercury retrograde. He was let go and released on a Mercury retrograde.
Right, went back.
Right? And this was the conjunction with Mercury and Neptune. So it's not the end. It is not the end. You're right.
No.
You're right. By the way, somebody should have told Beto not to announce his presidency during Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
Bad news.
Not good.
Bad news.
Well, he's from your state. Why don't you tell him?
And he's from the other side of the state.
Okay.
Texas is a big state.
Yeah. Anyway, this Jupiter's, again, what have we been dealing with this Mueller report? Russia, right? Russia. What is Russia? One country. Jupiter, Sagittarius, Neptune squaring it. What's real? What's not real? You know, this is going to be going on roughly for the next year.
Oh, is it going to still be?
What's that?
Still going to be in effect?
Yeah, I mean, Jupiter retrogrades back to 14, and then it's still going to be in square. It's only going to change later in the summer when it begins to move past Neptune.
Okay.
When we get to like September, actually. Then this year.
Yeah,
So we're
it's
just
going
going
to
to
get.
hear in story.
We're going to have to sort through,
Is it real?
is it real, is it not real? We had some of that when Saturn was in Capricorn. Saturn was in Sagittarius, squaring off against Neptune. But, so yeah, that's the story, and it's the story on the eclipse, this coming eclipse. So I would assume here, because it's going to be conjuncting the U.S. sun, that one of the things that it's a lunar eclipse, that one of the things that we're going to be dealing with, which has been the story of the nodes since they went into Cancer and Capricorn, respectively, is this idea around mothers, children, and abortion. Like right when the nodes went into Cancer and Saturn, right? Cancer, Capricorn. What happened? We have this guy in Virginia basically saying, "Oh, yeah, it's it's okay, she'll be fine. We'll talk to her, and if the baby, wants to be resuscitated." That's a South Node Capricorn moment. Capricorn represents the government. It represents organizing bodies, corporations, hierarchies. And what did we see? We saw all of a sudden New York saying, guess what? We can abort a child up until the time it is born. That law was passed, okay? And they tried to pass an afterbirth abortion law in Virginia. That's the true node in Cancer. That's maternity, that's motherhood, right? It's fertility. And what we have now is we have this polarity between these two nodes. And one is being quite officious, South Node and Capricorn, while the other is trying to hold on to values. Cancer is very value-oriented. Cancers usually are very value-oriented people. One time I had the misfortune saying cancers are cheap. And somebody in my chat room went off on me, right? We're not cheap, we're thrifty, okay? But that's like material, but they have emotional values. When we think of Cancer, we think of the family, we think of the home, we think of children, we think of the next generation, the next generation after that. That's what Cancer represents. Fixing, repairing, mending, right? And that's where the energy is right now. The energy is not with Capricorn. Even though Pluto and Saturn are there, and those are big players in the zodiac. They're deficient because that's where the South Node is. I'll give you an example. Anybody know Southern Poverty Law Center?
Yeah.
What just happened?
The
Geese and the other guy are gone, right? And the New York Times just did an absolute, takedown of the group based on their fundraising, right? How much money they have and what they actually do. That is a South Node in Capricorn moment. This is a powerful entity, very powerful entity, possibly even ruin people's lives if they branded them either a separatist or nationalist or hateful. That much power, right? Now the South Node is there, and it's sending notice to these sort of titanic oligarchic groups and organizations. You better be on guard. What did we just see with the Mueller report? FBI, CIA, are they without some form of circumspection? No, absolutely not. We're going to see more of this. This is going to happen. And on the other side, with this true node in Cancer, the people are getting to a point where they want to feel, right? Our world is becoming more and more disconnected. It's great to be here in this room tonight with you, truly, because I do a lot of this just sitting behind the camera, and we become more and more disconnected and disenfranchised. The internet has brought us closer together and further apart. So when we have the true node in Cancer, this idea that we could become kind of emotional beings or people that connect on an emotional level becomes much more important. The idea of femininity, of motherhood, the true feminine, even for men, finding that place inside of men where they become very protective, because that's the nature of Cancer, is be protective. These are all values that are going to be very, very important over the course of the next year. I also believe that we can get a glimpse as to what we need to do moving forward. Because if indeed we're in a deconstructive phase and we are in the fourth turning, then the true node in Cancer should give us some insight into what we need to do. What do we need to do? We need to prepare. We need to know how to do a few things, right? Can you fix a water break, right? Can you do that? Could you, if you needed to, run some conduit? Could you stitch something up? You know, these are really important, just everyday kind of survival skills. And what's happened through automation, the internet, specialization, we've lost touch with so much of this. One of the things that Zeus, who was on my show a couple of weeks ago, said, I grew up in a farm in Pennsylvania outside of Pittsburgh. Everybody in the farm did everything. The men and the women, there was no such thing as men and women's work.
Yeah.
Everybody did. This is the true node in Cancer. You know, we have to roll up our sleeves and realize that we have to do some work here. The other thing that's really important with the true node in Cancer is our relationship with water, especially local water. And I just got involved in a local initiative to take the fluoride out of our local water system. We got it on the ballot. So we're going to have a vote in November to see if people in our town will support that. So water is going to be very important. We've had too much water in the Midwest. So this is a very interesting time. We have about a year with these oppositions and these eclipses to get in touch with our humanity. Because where the eclipses are going after that will be Gemini and Sagittarius. And it's going to be very ideological, very idea-oriented, very technological, and often a very different direction. So for the next year, fill up your emotional buckets. This is important. You know, have experiences that are resonant and deep, right? You know, water's like memory, memory's like water. This is a good time to combine the two. And remember who you are. Like, remember where you came from. Cancer represents birth. You know, who were you when you came through the chute? You know, when you're 2-3 years old, pretty much kind of know who you are. 3 or 4 years old, I mean, think about it. It's pretty simple. You have a spirit. Everything else that comes on top of it, layers of complexity. You know, remember who you were. What was your family like? You know, for some people, that's not a great story, but you can still redeem that. Anyway, this is the eclipse. I think we're going to be dealing with this whole idea around mothers, maternity, abortion, birth, the birth of the nation, and I would assume that some of the headlines or stories you'll read around that time will be, is America dying? Where, you know, is the old version of America dying? What's the new version of America? I think that's going to be part of this narrative. Okay, let's move on to another eclipse. Okay, so this is the July full moon eclipse. And you can see here that we still have our pals in the sign of Cancer, although now we have the true node here the sun here. There's Mercury, Mars. Mercury is in Leo. Mars is in Leo. But over here on the other side, there's the moon. That's a full moon. And that's going to be in Capricorn, like tonight, right? So it's not the full moon in Capricorn, we have the moon in Capricorn tonight. And then here's Pluto, and here's Saturn. So this is kind of interesting because this is the same kind of lineup that we kind of brought in tonight.
The moon and
Yeah. So this is...
Except that's a lunar eclipse.
It is a lunar
Big
eclipse.
difference.
Yeah. So maybe some of the things we're talking about will come to fruition during that time. And again, a lot of oppositional energy. And on this side, I mean, this is very, very, to me, this is incredibly officious. And the moon in Capricorn is an interesting moon. You know, it's a moon that can be very utilitarian, cool, austere, and it's a moon that as you get older, this is the secret of Capricorn, as you get older, you get younger. So people have Capricorn moons in their charts, they tend to become kind of, you know, more emotional and more juicy as they get older, right? They grow up, they come into an environment where there's some kind of emotional austerity, usually the mother. There can be a very challenging relationship with the mother. But the mother may be very demanding. Sometimes the mother can be distant, might be a working mother, not around. So you can see that also with the moon square to
Is that
Saturn.
the child having the moon in Capricorn and the mother?
The child having the moon in Capricorn is a mother that could be distant, detached, you know, demanding, professional, right?
Because I have
You have what?
my biological daughter has the moon in Capricorn.
Moon in
And
Capricorn.
she bosses me.
But she bosses you.
Oh, absolutely.
So
She's
she
a
flipped the
worker.
script.
And she's a worker.
That's
Why do you
true.
think I always think come to her? God forbid she can't leave work.
Oh.
But
Oh.
I think we work out.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, but I know that's an interesting moon.
Well, the other thing too, with like if you see a moon Saturn square, the squares are hard angles.
Yeah.
That's like having a Capricorn moon in some ways,
Oh, yeah.
or dealing with Capricorn moon, moon Saturn square.
Yeah.
So- And sometimes people with Capricorn moons can suffer from depression a little bit, unless they have something else going on in their chart. You know, where it's like accentuating the moon in a positive
How
way.
about a moon conjunct Saturn?
Is that her?
No.
Oh, moon conjunct Saturn? Oh boy, that's intense. That's like old. That's old soul territory.
Is it?
Oh yeah, moon Saturn conjunct old soul territory for sure. Very serious,
Yeah.
super serious. A
I
person
know
would not
somebody
be.
that has that.
It would be a lot of fun until after 60.
Oh, really?
I mean,
That's what they say. Saturn delays everything.
it does delay everything.
I know. I got the sun and Saturn have to wait for everything.
So here we go. This is officious energy right here. To me, this is like the nanny state because we're dealing with Capricorn, we're dealing with the moon, we're dealing with Pluto. This is the nanny state, and these are people down here that are real people. I like Mercury and Mars and Leo. The energy there is great. It's fun. It's creative. It is connected to children, by the way, because children, Leo rules children. And let's see, we've got, where's our Jupiter square? Yep, we saw that Jupiter square. See that? To Neptune, that's still happening. Still happening, yep. So we're still wading through that. These are very oppositional forces. You know, we're dealing with a lot of polarity during the summertime. You know, what happens if a lot of our, you know, so-called social tensions and social strife don't have any resolution? You know, because that's what's really, I think, fueling a lot of our angst. There's no resolution. You know, oh, we locked up Jussie Smollett. He's going to get in front of the jury. And he's going to confess. No. Oh, we've got Trump. We've got him screwed to the wall, right? Mueller, yeah. What happened? Nothing, right? I mean, so there's this ongoing sense that things are not consummated. And what happens? There's a growing sense of tension because people want some form of justice or retribution, right? They want somebody to take the fall or climb up on a cross.
Right.
That's where we're at. And if we go through these eclipse cycles during the summertime, which is quite possible, and we don't have some kind of resolution, and if the summer is hot, well, look out, because these forces are going to be much more polarized than before. Oh no, not before, but they'll be highly polarized. But the upside of that, which I think could be really interesting, is if people wind up actually coming together and understanding that they're being manipulated in many different areas of our experience, and as a result being turned against one another.
Right.
It would be great if people said, wow, look,
Maybe that's not
look what happened. What's happening here? Oh yeah, we got the same story.
Wake up.
Yeah, who's doing it?
It must be the Jupiter and Neptune.
At the bottom where you're talking about children,
Yes.
could that be these kids with the sunrise movement even that are leading the way with talking about, climate and...
Could be. I mean, it'll be summertime, but maybe they'll go to Washington and do a march or something like that. I mean, that would be a time when theoretically they could be mobile, right? They're outside of school. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very interesting movement. Because it's affecting kids with Pluto and Sagittarius. They were born during the sign of Pluto and Sagittarius, and they tend to be some degree of idealism, looking for truth, right? Yeah. Well, the thing is, with the Pluto and Sag kids, and this is how Sagittarius works, they can think that they're going down a certain path and that they're actually, approximating something truthful, honest, and real. And if they find out, Sagittarius finds out that they've been manipulated or they've been hoaxed, two things can happen. They can become incredibly cynical, or they can flip the script and go in a completely different direction. So, I think if it's a natural thing, that's cool. But I also think they should just let kids be kids. Okay, here we go. This is December, and this is the new moon eclipse. Look at this! Holy smokes! This is a humdinger.
I'm not sure.
It's the day after Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
December 26th.
Yeah, I heard this is, and it's by itself, right? There's no lunar until January.
That's right. So we have back here Mars and Scorpio lurking in the background. You see that? Right here. And then everything else is in the foreground.
Yeah.
Jupiter-Sun conjunction. Jupiter's now gone into Capricorn. So guess what? We're out of there Jupiter squared Neptune. To me, this is a power play.
This is beginning to beginning.
This is a significant power play. And it is the beginning of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction.
Yeah, what's going to happen after January.
Yeah, this is significant.
Yeah.
You mean like a coup?
I don't think it would be a coup. It would be more, I think potentially more totalitarian, to be honest with you. This is what it feels like. Because here we go down here. To me, this is like that guy in Tiananmen Square with the tank. Right? And these are the tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And this is for the U.S.
This is for the entire world, but yeah, this is charted for the U.S. But this is the, it's not just the U.S. The world is going through it too.
Yeah.
England's going through Brexit.
Right.
France is going through their yellow vest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're cut. The other one's not really going through it. It's China. And they're steamrolling. They're trying to steamroll their One Belt, One Road initiative.
Right.
But there is some internecine conflict now going on in the Congo with China, and there's another one of these warlord civil war deals going on, right? Because the Chinese have their claws in the Congo with the rare earth minerals.
Resources there.
Right.
Yeah.
So the United States is actually backing one of the rebel coups. Yeah.
Yes, they don't want that happening.
China is very smart.
I know they are.
You know what's interesting about China is that instead of, I'm going to get a little political here, sorry, but when we basically became a new country on 9/11/2001, and we did, because the Patriot Act changed everything. It abrogated the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So we're living under a new America since then. And what happened is that essentially we got taken over by a neocon / Zionistic political system. That's what happened. It's all about, regime change, strike first. Let's get the CIA got like put on steroids when this happened. So what have we been doing since then? Regime change, regime change, regime change. Well, we don't want to go to war. War is too costly. But, maybe a real war might wake people's eyes up. Meanwhile, we're sleepwalking through these bloody regime changes.
Like World War II.
Well, Vietnam War, at least they had film crews.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see film crews in Syria? You don't see anything.
Right.
So what we have is these segmented realities that are taking place.
Right.
What the Chinese did is we're not going to get a regime change. We're going to go into countries and we're going to teach these people how to do things. And that's what they did. Now, I can't speak to how well they treat these people.
Well, that's what happened with Vietnam initially when they went in there and the French got it.
Right.
They were going to go in and, you know what happened. Then the Americans got out of control and treated people.
Well, that was about the opium trade.
Yeah, well, it started out like we were their friend after they got rid of the French.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
But it didn't.
Yeah. Well, again, you're dealing with a time where there's a major coup, the death of Kennedy, the rise of the CIA, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the Chinese will bring people over from Africa and bring them to China and instruct them on how to rule and this, So they've got a very different model. And we're stuck in this dead-end model of regime change.
Yeah.
And I think people slowly are waking up to it. The internet has changed the game.
It really has.
And people are just switching on right and left.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is finding information that is assimilable, truthful, right, and then digestible, so that the greatest number of people can kind of get the same message.
Mm-hmm.
What's important,
right?
And what's I feel like what's important is this whole kind of vendetta kind of idea and mentality, which is not great. But this eclipse is intense, and you're right.
Yeah.
It is a precursor to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. I feel like that's monetary. I feel like we're going to see some monetary shifts in October of this year.
Yeah, it's usually October.
It's October, and we're going to get some rumbles. And come January, February of next year, that Saturn-Pluto conjunction, I feel like it's not the Marianas Trench, but we're getting close. We're getting to a point where we're seeing the writing on the wall economically. That there are too many convergence points with brick and mortars closing, people losing jobs.
Recession?
It could be recession or worse. We're seeing now the price of food is crazy.
It is. It's
$2.74 for a head of organic lettuce.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah, out of control.
How long can we live with something like that? And we've got a ton. And the idea ultimately is to get people into one grid and one system, one economy, one form of transaction. And this, to me, October, December, and then January, February, I feel like that is the beginning of that platform.
We'll see if they succeed.
But here, again, there's that guy, that lone guy against the tanks of Tiananmen Square. Will they succeed? We'll see.
It has to.
What's that? That guy? That lone guy? Well, I think that ultimately we're going to come into a new beginning, a new time. And it'll be a time with a very different set of values. Right. Because we've been spoiled to our third eye in this culture. And those values, I think, will be much more resonant with some of the stuff that we're seeing with the true node cancer.
Again, when the Edwardian period ended, there's a movie called The Shooting Party. Did you ever see it?
I know that movie, yeah.
Yeah, it was good. And their world was ending. They knew it. Right. I mean, that was an unbelievable world in England with all those big houses. They couldn't sustain that. And then that World War I came and smacked, the whole world changed.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. It doesn't mean we're going to have a war, but something's going to, we have to transform. And then look what it led to, the 20th, the second era.
Right.
I mean, what they say, that was so wild. There's a book by Barbara Cardin called We Danced All Night or something.
Mm-hmm.
You never heard it. They say, if you want an account of what little, I don't even want to buy it from Amazon. One of these days I'm going to do a used copy. We Danced All Night or something.
Yeah, that period before the Industrial Revolution is
really wild.
It's a very intense period too, because people knew that change was coming.
Yeah, and then again, the stock market crashed, and that wiped out all that decadence.
Right. Yeah.
See, again, it was like it went in gradual periods.
Yeah, we're kind of in a phase now where it's almost like, are you familiar with the Weimar Republic? You know that period?
Yeah.
We're kind of on the borderline of that Weimar Republic kind of feel. It's like I've been reading stories about how young women are putting themselves through college, by being a sugar baby and having body cams and stuff. To me, that's like very Weimar-esque. It reeks of that kind of decadence because they can't afford to put themselves through school, so they use their body. The human body was one of the biggest forms of transactions during the time of the Weimar Republic, because you couldn't afford anything. But people were, so everything became, human values became much cheaper. So it's a very interesting time we're in. Very, very interesting. I would suggest that during this time with the summer, this period in the summer, that you soak up as much of your humanity as possible, right? Whatever it is, either your kids, your grandkids, your garden, soak up as much as possible. Be a sponge, right? Because we're going to head into a time in a period when these nodes change, the mentality is going to be very, very different. We're going to have to remember. We're going to have to remember that we're human.
So we, from an energetic standpoint, I can't do the astrology, but from an energetic standpoint, we go through times of light and dark. And I'm on board with the thinking about this as Atlantean times, where they blew themselves out due to the technology that was well more advanced than what they were prepared to handle. But we're going to have enough of a tipping point. I just believe that we chose to be here at this time to hold this space for this to come in. At least people who are doing the light work and have an understanding of human consciousness and the times that we're going through. These were all, what's the word? They were, come on, help me out with the word, already, we know about this time coming.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Enlightened?
No, prophecy, thank you, prophecy.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know, from all the readings, you don't know how or what that looked like, but you knew that there's a time coming of great change. So,
How would you think this winter?
I don't know.
That's what you're.
We're gonna have a phase between 2020 and 2025, which is going to be, I think, a very strange period in a lot of ways, and we're going to see this kind of continued atrophy of a system. And in 2025, some major things happen astrologically. Pluto moves into Aquarius.
Yeah.
Big. Neptune moves into Aries and moves out of its own sign, Pisces, into Aries. Uranus moves into Gemini. They're all happening right then in 2025. And then Saturn moves into Aries. So I would assume that around 2025 that we could begin to imagine this idea of the new hero. Because we're dealing with Aries energy, which is very responsive energy, right? It's now, it's now, it's now. And Neptune can be kind of a great call in some ways. Because Neptune tend to be spiritual and religious. So this could be people like hearing a call. That this Aries spirit, the spirit of the individual, hears this call in some ways. And Saturn comes into the conjunction and says this is important. That we create. Saturn represents culture, right? represents dominant culture. So that could be a time where there's an opportunity to begin to create a new culture.
And again, the outer planets are going into the early signs of
The zodiac. With the exception of Aquarius.
Except for Pluto.
Pluto, of course, right.
So he's still doing his work at the end of the zodiacal.
So those are, so what Pat is referring to
Yeah.
is that those are spring energies,
Right.
right? We're dealing with Aries, we're dealing with Gemini.
Right. And that's Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and they're the gods of change.
That's right. And what goes along with that is that there's no Earth there.
Yeah.
From Saturn to Pluto.
Yeah.
So we're in a phase that is very ungrounded. Very, very ungrounded.
Yeah.
What's
2025.
Yeah.
Very and Saturn finally moves into Taurus 3 years after this. So right around 2027, when Saturn's in Taurus, I think we begin to hit and make new ground.
That's a good period.
Oh, really? Yeah.
What? The June keys?
Oh.
Yeah.
Ninth, what was it? Hercules.
Yeah.
2012.
Yeah. Yeah. I could. Yeah. I haven't read that, but I could see that with Saturn and Taurus. That's when something new
Yeah.
comes. So
all your DNA changes, and like the kids that are born are actually born conscious.
Yeah.
They don't have to remember.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Born
Yeah.
already.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Talking about kids in conscious, my 3-year-old said, I was telling him about the stars. He said, Pluto's not a transit. I don't God, this kid don't know. He meant to be Pluto. Spring.
3 years old. He's hanging out with you. He's hanging out with you. That's why.
No, but he meant Pluto.
Oh, Pluto, the dog.
Yes.
Oh, Pluto.
Yeah, I took him serious.
Oh, right.
How did he know?
Oh, okay. There you
My
go.
daughter, the other one, Deborah said, Mom, you meant to do people. No.
So what about Sirius A, B, and C and Nibiru, planet Nibiru?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, Sirius B is conjunct the United States Sun, right? So it's right around 14 degrees Cancer. So that's like the twin flame of our sun. It's a binary star. Plays a huge role in creation myths. Plays a huge role in the rise of the Nile and the tide. Like they decided that they were going to sign that Declaration of Independence when Sirius and the sun were conjunct. Like Sirius rose before the sun on that day and was conjunct. It was a Freemasonic emblem that was burned into the Constitution. Sirius is a very interesting. I mean, for the Freemasons, that's their heaven. That's the blazing star, right? I don't know about Sirius A as much as B. B is a big player. Like if you go into the Dogon, the Dogon tribe in northern Africa, the Dogon were able to talk. They were able to talk to French anthropologists and basically talk to them and say, well, there's this star up there, and this is where we come from, and this is where our teachings come from. So the French, they couldn't see it. They didn't have the proper telescopes. And then they realized that, hey, those guys knew where this was, and they didn't have the equipment.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Nomo, who's the creator god, which is very interesting to his creation myths. That's all Sirius B related. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the same word for dolphin in Aboriginal, I think is Nomo as well. So they share the same. So it's interesting, right? Sirius plays a role, big role. There are temples that are, consecrated to Sirius and the rise of Sirius, Heliacal rise of Sirius. Nibiru, I'm not a Nibiru guy. I mean, if it was going to be here, I think it would have been here by now.
You can't see it.
I mean, was it a force at some point in time? Perhaps. Or did it bring the Anunnaki, along for the ride? Perhaps. It's very interesting
They're
stories.
stalled out there.
What's that?
They're stalled out there.
Maybe they can stay salt as far as I'm
Yes.
concerned.
Yes.
We don't need.
There's a big portal in the Middle East.
Huge, right? Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah.
Everybody's, we're being mined for our resources.
Oh, no doubt.
Earth is a very big resource.
Yeah.
That's.
You taking off? Thank you.
Oh, isn't it nice to meet you?
You all.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
talked to you.
Okay, great. Okay.
Poor grandchildren, so I want to know.
Okay.
Bye.
Well,
Bye.
I
Nice
guess
to meet
does anybody else have any questions?
Where do you put all this information?
Isn't he amazing?
Yeah,
He really
this
is.
is really-
He really is.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got a Moon Mercury conjunction. Maybe that's it. Yeah.
Moon and what sign?
Libra.
In Libra, you got the moon in Libra. Yeah, that's the air sign.
Yeah.
Libra, no. I don't know how you remember. If I had a good memory.
Well, I do it.
like half.
I do it a lot, right? So
Right.
some of it is
It's a
repetition,
passion.
right? Some of it is repetition.
Yeah, but it's a passion you remember. Because I remember things because I have my nice house. Gemini loaded with planets.
Hey, for kicks and giggles, let's see if we have a chat here, and if there's like some chatting going on. Let's check it out.
You went to California and I went to the area last time.
Let's see.
Then you got another one that's coming up. Your hotel salary.
All right. Apparently, we had some nasty chat,
Oh.
and we'll hide that. Somebody named Tattooed Spirit. All right. See you later.
Oh, you didn't control that.
Okay. Let's see. What do we have here? 2020 is going to be gross in it. We got how many people are watching? Let me see.
Me?
Yeah. Let's see what do we have here. What else we got? Solutions gathering, quite entertaining. They said you're quite entertaining, Pat. You should have your own. They said
I know, I said I wasn't going to.
they said you should have your own YouTube channel.
Did they really?
I got crazy ideas.
So we got a nice chat room in there. Hi guys, nice to see you. Good to see you. It's the regulars. All right, are we good? Are you guys good?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming.
Get in on him.
Pat, you want to go out there and just say hi to everybody? Say, come on, Pat, do a star turn.
Sing live from Newtown.
Go sit in the chair, Pat. Just go on and run there. Yeah, go on there and just do a live from Newtown.
Okay, welcome to Newtown, Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Do a live from Newtown, like Saturday Night Live.
I don't watch Saturday Night Live.
Okay, so go live from Newtown.
Live from Newtown, Bucks County, PA here, the historic ghost town of New Hope. Robert wouldn't get out of the car, he got scared. But anyhow, we're here having a great time, and Webber Shitwell could be here, and he's a great guy. I was here with him before. So, we'll have a great weekend, and it was nice meeting you. I wish I could see you too. But. Okay.
Thanks, Pat. You want to go up there, honey? Go on up there. Come on, go. Come on, go. Honey moment. Go, go, go.
Honey,
Go, go.
How about Donna?
No, go, honey. Honey. It's your store. Go.
No, I'm not.
All right.
Oh, honey won't go.
You want to advertise? No, why don't you go advertise Solutions?
You should say,
Meryl, why don't you go up there? Go on up there, Meryl.
you should say come to
Look, yeah.
Newtown.
Okay, hey guys in the chat room, we're gonna stop the stream. Thank you for showing up, and
Best store in Newtown.
there we go.
Yay.
There you
Join
go.
us on Facebook.
So I'll see you guys on maybe Monday. 50 minutes of flame. Have a great weekend. Thanks for showing up. Bye for now.
Isn't he great?